Good morning, this is Paul Smith with the Marin County Fire Chiefs Association History Program, and this morning we're interviewing retired Fire Chief Bill Lellis, formerly Fire Chief of the Larkspur Fire Department here in Marin County. And we're going to chat a little bit with Bill about his personal history, his involvement in the fire service, and how we got here and how he got here. So good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Chief. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
So I'd like to chat with you for just a little bit about how you got involved in the fire service here in Marin County. And, you know, I know you're from the Boston area, but what brought you all the way out to California, and what got you interested in serving your community here in Larkspur?
Well, the first thing is I never in my mind never thought about being a fireman. That was never in my mind. It was 1958-ish, 57. I'm in the Air Force for 4 years. I get discharged, and I'm in a radar station on the west mesa of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We get discharged. So I'm signed up. I'm registered to go to the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. I decided to come out to California and visit with an uncle who lived in Tiburon, and just to say hi. And he started telling me about this community colleges in California where the credits were like $3, and so he was a bachelor, and so he offered me to come live with him in Tiburon on Juneau Road. So I took him up and went back to Albuquerque, got all my stuff, came back out, lived in, and then in that fall I attended the College of Marin. I registered with the College of Marin with the thought of being a history major. I wanted to teach history, and played some ball. And I was living in a single one-room flat on Bank Street in San Anselmo, living on my GI Bill, which was $110 a month. Never made it full month on 110. And I heard from a friend of mine, Evelyn Ivansko, whose dad was a volunteer here in Larkspur, that they had this thing called a sleeper program. Mm-hmm. And that I should come down here and talk to the fire chief, John Raggio, who at the time was the fire chief for the city. So I came down, made an appointment. John interviewed me, and John was a former flyer in World War II, B-17s, and I had just gotten out of the service. So we had that little connection there. And in the 50s, most of the guys being hired were coming out of the service. So he was full up with beds, but he offered me what I now was the family kitchen, but it was now just a kitchen, no one using it. So I had a cot, and I took him up on it. So in February 1958, I became a volunteer sleeper and had no idea what I was doing.
So you had no training?
Nothing.
Did you have a formal interview with the chief, or how did that go?
It was just I sit down, told him who I was, told him about the young lady, Evelyn, who told me about her dad being a fireman and stuff like that. So that was how I got here, to talk to him. And I told him my story, and he offered me to sleep in the kitchen. So I slept on a GI cot in what is now the main kitchen here at the station, until one of our sleepers was Art Riedermeyer, who was a fireman at Treasure Island, was going to get married. As soon as Art moved out, I could move in and take over his bedroom. So that's how I became a sleeper. Had three great guys, Chief John Raggio, military guy, Assistant Chief George Bartram, and firefighter Claire Harder, both all served in the Pacific. Those two gentlemen served in the Pacific. So, and I had just come out of the military 4 years. So I was in air movement. I was in flight planning and radar operating with aircraft. So all of a sudden, I was going to go back to school, the College of Marin, and I met what would become my wife, and John in those days, he just offered you a job. There was no test or none of that stuff. He offered me an opening in the fire department, and I turned it down because I was going to go back to college.
Well, he liked you.
Yeah.
You've been a sleeper for
for a
few
year
months,
or so.
a year or so, yeah. You've got a little bit of training under your belt.
yeah.
Been to a few calls.
Yep, loved it.
Yep.
And he offered me the job, full-time job.
Yep.
And I said, no, I'm going back to college. I want to finish my degree. In the meantime, I met my wife, who was a teller at the bank here in town.
Okay.
So my plan started. So he's in the process of hiring. And I go back to him and say, this is George Bartram. I'm sorry, George Bartram was holding the position. John had retired. And he said, well, Bill, we're in the middle of the process. We wouldn't be fair to bring you in. And I understood that. So he said, maybe the next time. So I said, okay. And then didn't realize that he was pulling my string. So that evening he came and said, you still want the job? I said, yeah. He said, it's yours.
No kidding.
Yeah, so that was kind of an accident. I stumbled into it.
Yep.
And I just fell in love with the fire department.
Yep.
And we're in the building now that was my building. One of the rules was if you were in the station and they broke a call, you had to go. So we got to go a lot of calls. 3 guys in the front end, the middle guy shifting, the other guy on the radio. So and they started to get some more. As the population in the community grew, they needed more firefighters. So in September of 1960, I became a full-time paid firefighter.
1960.
September the 15th.
Now, were you married at the time?
No, I was about to get married.
Okay.
I was a couple months off.
So you were still living in the fire station?
I was still living in the firehouse. So we decided to get married. And as it turns out, I rented the house that's right behind the firehouse on the parking lot. The window, I rented it for $75 a month. My wife and I moved in there. We had our first 2 children there. And I would just walk down the stairs and she would open the window like a drive up. And she'd give me my dinner and my lunch. And I would eat right here. This used to be a kitchen behind us. That's the historical room. And so after that, I worked by myself, and I promoted. There was an opening there for captain, and a bunch of us. They were going to start putting captains on shifts.
Okay.
So Chief Sheriff, who later became Craig Shears, and I and a bunch of guys competed, and we got the position. Craig Shears got the captain, and I got the captain, and we have promoted one of them to a lieutenant because it's 72 hours a week. It was basically on and off all the time. It took you about 3 weeks to get a 4-day break under that schedule. And
so on duty, available for response was the fire chief.
Yep.
You was the captain.
Yeah.
And one paid person?
One paid person, yeah.
And then the volunteer or the sleeper, whoever happened to be around.
Yeah, right. And then we moved, then we went to, we had 3 guys here at one. Then we went to 3, we opened Station 2. We had 2 guys out there.
Right.
So it was 3 and 2. And then they had, George Bartram was the chief. George decided to leave and go into work for Allstate.
Okay.
So they opened stayed in-house and opened the chief's job. And Craig and I competed for the job.
Same Craig Shirts that you competed with the captain's job with a few years earlier.
Yeah, and Craig and I were good friends. Craig and I used to go over to an ice skate in the city, the place that's all torn down at the cliff house there.
Playland at the beach.
Sutros.
Sutros Bath.
He and I would go to Sutros. They had a big ice rink down at the big ice rink, and we'd go down in, and we used to have some fun. We don't want to talk about, but we had a good time. But Craig and I were good friends, and Craig got the chief's job, and that's good. I believed in the position. I believe in the respect that you give the badge, and we got along good. And then we had and then Craig retired, and I was assistant chief. Craig appointed me assistant chief right away. I always give him credit and thank him so much for doing that, because we needed fire prevention, we needed training position and stuff like that. So when he became chief, the city agreed to create an assistant chief's position.
And that assistant chief was responsible for training and fire prevention. And up to that time, very informal.
Very informal, just on Tuesday nights, on duty, throw a ladder against the building, lay some hose, take a hydrant, stuff like that. So, and then Craig retired, and I got the interim job for a year, and then after a year, I was appointed full-time chief.
And when was that, Bill?
Good question. 87-ish? Maybe maybe no.
It's before that.
Yeah, before that. Yeah, probably in late 70s.
Okay.
I'm guessing. Yeah.
Okay.
Dates would never matter to me. They don't, because I wasn't going to put a resume together and go look for a job. I was very happy here.
Right.
My family was here. Great school system.
Absolutely.
I'm not leaving Larkspur, and I didn't. So I stayed here, and I retired. We had a change of administrations
At the city level.
City hall level, and decided to pull the plug. So at the age of 50, I left Larkspur. I lived in town, but I left the fire service per se. And then I became basically the fire marshal for Sonoma County.
Yes, I remember that.
And I was up there, and I hired people I knew to do some work. And then I worked with the city of San Rafael for 11 years, doing plan reviews, field inspections. I'm a certified hazardous material evaluator, and did those I'm a certified building inspector.
So you worked in that capacity for the city of Santa Fe?
Yeah, also when I was assistant chief, I was the city building inspector.
Okay.
Because when Prop 13 came, our building inspector left for Napa, so we were going to have to let a guy go to hire a building inspector.
Okay.
And I told the city manager, I'll take that job. I can be assistant chief and building inspector.
And that worked out. I think it worked out.
It did. So, and we didn't have to lose anybody. No one had to lose their job. So that worked out good. And then after I left, and I had a wonderful time. I would never change anything that I did. The only thing I would change, and I tell anybody and everybody, get as much education as you can.
Right.
Basic people skills. Absolutely, to be a fire chief, you need people skills, which I kind of lacked. The union always had one up on us, because the union would have training exercises and conferences that they would go to and learn how to negotiate once the Brown Act and the Myers-Brown Acts came into effect. But fire chiefs had no training to go to. We would go into negotiations cold, no idea of procedures, techniques, how to do it, where the union had it all. So we kind of went in with
it was interesting times,
yeah,
right?
it was very interesting times when that, because in those days, before that, the chief did all the negotiating.
Okay,
Chief
right.
for the budget, salaries, everything was done by the fire chief with the city manager. The Brown Act is activated, signed into law, and now the union has to have representation.
Right.
And the Myers-Brown Act and labor and stuff like that. So again, I would tell everybody, get as much education you can, develop those personal skills, but you're still the fire chief.
Right.
Everybody wants to be liked, but sometimes in the position, all you want is the respect for the badge. That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
So respect.
That's all. And I think it works both ways. If the union folks have respect for the chief and the chief has respect for his troops, it can be a good thing.
Yeah.
And if there's some...
Going back, there was a moment in time when I was a sleeper. I got kind of homesick from Massachusetts, and I went back with the idea of staying back there and getting the job. And it just didn't work out. There was nothing back in New England that I wanted. So I hitchhiked back across country, back here, which was an experience. So, and I came back to the firehouse. They welcomed me right back like I had never left. And so that was kind of an experience. And then, but once I left Larkspur, I've been busy. Right now, currently, I'm the fire marshal for the Rodeo Hercules Fire Protection District over in Contra Costa County. I live in Hercules with my wife. So I had a great run.
Right.
I enjoyed. We had some wonderful calls to go to. Everything. It's kind of strange when firemen say, "I hope we break a call today," and I always used to say, "Are you hoping that one of your citizens gets hurt?" But we just want action, and that's what it's all about. It's nothing personal. It's just I hope we do something, and then all of a sudden, I think that the guys now are getting so many calls a day, running probably 10, 12 calls a day, and getting no sleep.
Right.
And so I think we don't say that anymore.
No.
No, we don't say, I hope we get a call. Yeah, so, but
Well, back to your, you mentioned you were with both the city of Larkspur, and then you moved on to Sonoma. I remember
Yeah,
those days as doing, in Santa Fe, as doing code compliance.
oh, yes, yes.
Now, I was one of those guys in your classes back in the early 80s
Yeah.
on codes and ordinances, and I also took your fire cause and origin class, and they were very, very interesting. And you're a good instructor with that. You know your stuff. Now, what was your technique, if I can ask, to take that information that you had on complex codes, ordinances, fire inspections, how to conduct yourself in a fire inspection, or how to conduct yourself and how to conduct a cause and origin investigation, and distill it into language that an engine company firefighter would understand?
Yeah. For some reason, I was always interested in law. A little secret I don't tell many people, but I studied law for about a year. I was going to school studying law, and then the cost of it just got, with kids, I had 3 or 4 kids by that time, and the cost, I just had to drop out. But I've always liked law, and I still do like law. And the fire investigation, there was a gentleman in Fairfax named Judge Hedema. Judge and I were the best of friends, and we both were very interested in fire investigation. So we said, let's form it, because then there was Stan Rowan. He was assistant chief with the county. And so what we did is mostly the fire marshals, and everybody pretty much had a fire marshal position then. So we formed the cause and origins team.
Okay.
And we put that in motion. Kind of the format was the same, that we would submit to Comm Center a list of 4 guys each month. One of them would be the leader and the other guys, and then if anyone needed help investigating, they'd call Comm Center and they would call out the team. And I got to see more fires, investigate more fires than I ever would have done in Larkspur.
Huh?
Yeah, and so the experience just grew. And I can remember we had a fire in Kentfield that we couldn't find the origin. It was as puzzling as, so we got to hold the building. We brought the fire marshal down from Sacramento. He came down on a Saturday, and we were just stumbling through the science of fire investigation in those times. There was a lot of false indicators that we were trained that turned out to be invalid and later taken out of the textbooks. And when George came down from Sacramento, he walked into the building, and I'm not kidding you, in 10 minutes he had the origin down. And it was right in front of us. So.
This was George Hedema.
No, this was George. I'm drawing a name on his last name, but he was the fire investigator from the state fire marshal, and he caught the origin. And from that point on, George and I and then Stan, we decided we need to know more. We need to really hit the books and understand what we're looking at. So he taught us the concept of procedural 360 walk around. Look for low burns, least fire to most fire. That concept is still in NFPA 921.
It is,
so
yeah.
it's still there. So we are very proud of that, forming that organization, and it's still very active today. I believe I've been out of touch with Marin County, but I still think they have an origin and cause team. So I was always interested, and still is interested in the legal procedure.
Yeah, we could tell you were passionate about it when you were teaching us, because you had a lot of good stories, and you had a lot of good examples on
I always felt in fire prevention, because it's a powerful position, and you can demand stuff technically that's not black and white, but you had to back it up. If someone were to challenge you, I remember reading in the magazines the fire being challenged, and I remember back home there's a town called Haverhill that lost a building, and they were taken to court, and they lost because the way they did something on the fire ground, and that really sent shockwaves to the fire service. I mean, even though it was back in New England, lawsuits in New England affect lawsuits in California, so you really have to be on your toes. And so I started hitting the books and teaching, and I just, as I said, I had that background in law courses I was taking. So it kind of came easy to me. But
It was fun.
yeah,
It was fun to learn from you.
Yeah, it was.
It was, yeah.
So other than that, as I said earlier, I wouldn't change a thing, except I would get more education.
Okay.
I don't have a degree. I'd like to have initials at the end of my name, whatever they want to be.
RET, retired.
That's a good, I like that one. That's good. But it was a great run. It still is. I work for the city of Hercules now is going through an expansion of incredible. The town is like 28,000 people right now. And the next 3 to 5 years we'll grow by 10,000.
Really?
We have that much development building going on in Hercules, so I'm very, very busy. I'm the fire marshal's the only guy doing the plan reviews and field inspections. So I'm very busy, and I love it being busy, and it keeps me on my toes.
Yeah, and I thank you for spending some time here with us today.
Thank you for coming in. I hope you enjoy my history. And,
Absolutely.
I bid you adieu, I guess. All
Thanks,
right.
Bill.
Thank you.
And Bill, before you go, if magically we could rewind the clock,
Okay.
would you do it all over again?
Yes, I would, with the exception of the change of administrations at City Hall.
See, it's interesting. As we get older, you know, we always say, if I was 28 years old and I knew everything I knew
wow.
today,
Yeah.
you'd take the world by storm.
Yeah. It was just, I had so much trust in city government that I should have hired an attorney. See, and I didn't. I trusted City Hall, and City Hall turned on me. And I said, time to move on.
Yeah.
So I hit
Yep.
15 left.
Sometimes that's the way it is.
Yeah, it is, and I had no hard feelings.
Right.
My life has worked out perfect, beautiful. I love what I was doing. I love the challenge.
Well, you know, like we tell our kids, find something you love,
And
you'll
do it.
never work a day in your
That's
life.
right. You don't. That's
You
right.
don't.
Yeah.
I love my career too.
Yeah, I've given up a knee to the building, the business. But other than that, fell off a truck once, and now I have a make-believe knee. But so I can't go through it.